2023 was a great year for K-pop in my personal opinion. The music was diverse, the groups were bigger than ever, and in this video, we will attempt to document and recap the best and worst of the year for K-pop girl groups. Now, I know that a lot has also happened for boy groups, but I don't really keep up with them beyond the occasional title track or two, so I won't be able to provide much of an opinion on anything boy group related. Now, I most likely will not be able to pack every single comeback and event of 2023 into this video, because then this video would be 5 hours long, and we're not trying to be here all day, so I'll only go over the comebacks and events that I personally kept up with throughout the year, and you guys can obviously drop in the comments anything that I may have missed, whether it's about boy or girl groups, because at the end of the day, this video is meant to celebrate all of the W's of K-pop and to criticize all of the L's. Disclaimer, don't expect any sort of organization with this video. I'm literally talking off the top of my head for most of this stuff, so none of this will be ranked from worst to best, nor will it even be chronological order, because despite how much I tried to do that, my ADHD just would not allow me to. With that being said, this is probably going to be my longest video yet, and yes, chapter selections will be below in case you choose to skip around, so let's get on to the video. Starting the year off with some excellent news, on the 22nd of January, GWSN won their first trial to terminate their contracts with the Wave Music. Now, I've already done a few videos chronicling the events that led up to this lawsuit. So, if you wish to know more, then those videos are definitely still up on the channel. There are also plenty of other videos and articles to give you a full rundown. But to make a long story short, GWSN was a girl group that debuted in 2018. They dropped many bops and their company fumbled the bag with their careers. The members rightfully wanted out of their contracts, accusing the Wave Music, who were initially called Kiwi Pop, of neglect. These acts of neglect would also eventually lead to two of the members, Mia and Soso, getting slapped with criminal charges, alleging that they had overstayed their visas due to the fact that the company, for some reason, hadn't gotten around to renewing these visas. The group filed suit and eventually won, finally allowed freedom to part ways with the Wave. This was a major W in my opinion. Far too many of these smaller companies get away with taking advantage of idols when they're young, and they do this knowing very likely that there will be very few repercussions. This is precisely why I always kind of side-eye people who say stuff like, oh, these idols know exactly what they're getting themselves into when they sign these contracts. Well, this is one of the many examples of how easy it is to take advantage of someone, especially when they're young and a company promises them all of the dreams and riches that they could ever want in order to convince them to sign a contract that doesn't have their best interest at heart. Now, on to comebacks. Got the Beat came back with an EP, and after the polarizing travesty that was their debut, their EP seemed to have come and gone with little fanfare, and that's a shame, because the EP wasn't that bad. It wasn't the best music that SM has ever produced for one of their artists, but there were still some decent songs here. Goddess Level, Alter Ego, and Outlaw were all instant favorites for me for a while. My only complaint about this EP was how similar so many of the songs were. They all started to blend together after a while, which kind of killed a lot of the diversity they could have had, especially considering the powerhouse female idols that they have in this group. SM could have had Winter, Taeyeon, and Wendy go off with the vocals on this EP, and I would have loved more than anything to get some songs that allowed the members to really eat these songs alive. Other than that, the songs that I pointed out were good listens, but ultimately had no real longevity. Speaking of longevity, Adora must have put crack in whatever Newjeans is serving, because they pretty much took over my playlist this year. These ladies took over the whole year, for being honest. OMG dropped on January 6th and is still pretty much everywhere, even becoming one of the most streamed songs in the US. I liked OMG, but Ditto joined my all-time favorite list of songs. This song is literally up there with my other God tier favorites, Hwa and Love Dive. Two of the most beautiful songs in existence, and no one can convince me otherwise. Honestly, controversy aside, Newjeans as a group is, in my opinion, a major win and have been since day one. From the second they debuted to the way they're marketed to their branding and image, many companies should look at them and take notes on how to push a group the right way. And speaking of companies who know the meaning of consistent marketing, we need to talk about STAYC and their release of Teenfresh. Though this mini album wasn't their strongest, it definitely stuck to their concept with this youthful, carefree bubblegum pop that I think perfectly solidified their place in the industry as 4th gen's teen crush queens, in my personal opinion. Now, when I say that this wasn't their strongest album, it's not because I think the music was weak. I actually really liked Be Mine and I Wanna Do. So what I mean by weak, I'm mainly referring to the fact that this album did something that I really wish it hadn't. For some reason, someone at high up thought that it would be a great idea to release this mini with 3 versions of the same song. What am I talking about? I say for some reason, but I already know the reason. They really wanted to make this release as attractive as possible to a wider audience beyond their South Korean fan base, and that's okay. But seriously, why did Bubble need both an English release and a sped up English version? I know that this is probably just me nitpicking and I shouldn't even clown high up for it because at the end of the day, any competent company will do whatever they can to push their group out to as many potential markets as possible. But this sped up version was a painfully obvious attempt to force some TikTok virality with this song. And it makes sense to do this in theory, but there is a drawback. A good majority of the demographic for most K-pop fans are on TikTok, so yes, it makes sense for high up to turn their efforts toward that platform. But like I always say, you can't force virality. If a song goes viral anywhere, it's usually because it didn't happen on purpose. Was anyone really expecting 50/50's Cupid to blow up the way it did? Certainly not their company. And yes, we will definitely get back to the topic of 50/50 later on in the video. Anyway, when you make it obvious that you're pandering to your audience instead of just letting them discover the song naturally and allowing it to blow up on its own merit, you risk turning some people off and inducing content overload. STAYC isn't the first group to do this, so I'm not just going to sit here and only pick on them. LE SSERAFIM did it this year too, with the 5,000 versions of Eve, STAYC, and the Bluebeard's wife Source Music decided to release. To be fair, all groups are guilty of this to a certain extent, with the 200 million dance challenges that each group makes for just one song. On one hand, these challenges are actually kind of cute. It's wholesome to see idols from different groups interact sometimes, especially considering how adverse some of their fans are towards seeing their faves with other groups. And also especially when these challenges feature both male and female idols dancing together. On the other hand, once I start hearing a song too much, then there's an 80% chance that I might grow to hate it. But hey, that's just me. I obviously don't speak for everyone, so this whole section might not even resonate with some of y'all, and that's perfectly okay. Just thought I'd throw in this little observation. Also, I know that these TikTok challenges didn't start in 2023. I only mentioned them here as an observation of one of the many trends that K-pop has leaned into alongside the release of these sped up song versions. Okay, so now let's take a brief detour onward to the topic of disbandments. On February 14th, 2023, MLD announced the official disbandment of Momoland, and most of us applauded the news. Again, there is not nearly enough time to go over the many injustices this group faced, so let's just try to make a long story short again. Momoland debuted on November 10th, 2016 with the song Jan Kung Kwang, and yes, I most likely mispronounced that. Though they had a modest fan base at debut, the group would later blow up with wider audiences following their release of 2019's Boom Boom. This song felt like it came out of nowhere and put them at the forefront of the industry for a good majority of 2019. The group would go on to reach mainstream recognition and success for the first time in their careers, and MLD did not know how to handle it. And the group would then go on to implode due to them making some of the most random and oddest decisions I've ever seen a company make with one of their groups. 3 members, Daisy, Taeha, and Yeonwoo, were randomly cut from the group lineup with little to no explanation. Yeonwoo would later state that she didn't even want to leave the group and insinuated that MLD forced her into acting. Taeha, as far as I know, has never really spoken up about the matter, and Daisy would later go on to further expose MLD for their shady ways, stating that the reality show that the group originated from was rigged, and MLD would then try to sue her for it. All of this bad press would eventually adversely affect the group. The members would later be caught up in many random scandals, including a few plagiarism claims. MLD, again, clearly had no idea how to handle all of the criticism, so they started trying to push them in the Philippines, where they were actually quite popular. They even had a feature with the Dominican singer Natty Natasha, probably hoping to branch out beyond South Korea once the group started to run out of steam. The group's comebacks would soon slow down before the group would then eventually disappear altogether. When their disbandment was announced in 2023, people were just happy that the members were finally free. So Momoland's disbandment was probably a major but bittersweet W for the members, at least considering all of the shit that eventually led to their downfall. Also, Jui, one of the members, has since come out to state that the group might reunite in the future, but I haven't heard any further information on when that might happen, so for now we'll just call this a temporary disbandment. Speaking of celebrated disbandments, Brave Girls also technically disbanded in 2023. These ladies have had one of the wildest rides in K-pop history. They, like Momoland, went from being virtual unknowns for many years to suddenly blowing up at random due to a viral video. But unlike Momoland, Brave Girls' disbandment wasn't really a disbandment. They have since rebranded to BB Girls under Warner Music Korea, which is what I call an optimistic W. Okay, so now let's talk about TWICE, with the release of their 12th mini album, Ready to Be. Man, this mini was a bop machine in my opinion, and its sales really made me question why the hell there are still so many people that genuinely believe that TWICE is flopping. These women are still at the forefront of the industry, and their push into the US was definitely one of the more unexpected successes. Back when TWICE was still in their cute phase, many people were convinced that JYP didn't have what it takes to successfully push them in the US, mainly because they were speculating that their concept just wouldn't work here. In some ways, I almost understand some of these opinions, but I also personally think that these people were likely only looking at it from the perspective of where TWICE was musically in their careers when these discussions about them entering the US market began. In their rookie years, their music was far brighter than the moodier and more sultry sounding songs that they're dropping today. I don't know if this will be an unpopular opinion or not, but I personally think that JYP's way of gradually maturing TWICE's sound over the years has been quite well done. The members look very comfortable with their newer and more womanly concept, and they're also beautifully compatible with their music and have aged perfectly into the darker and smoother sound that they introduced with Moonlight Sunrise. Seeing their successes with the US with this sound, I really hope that they stick with it. Speaking of girl groups pushing into the US, I cannot just skate past this topic without mentioning one of my alt groups, who also formally introduced themselves to the US market this year, I-DLE. Yes, instead of coming back with another Korean comeback following the great success of Queen Card, I-DLE decided to give us their first English EP, Heat. Now, there was a lot of discourse around this EP, and I was just curious to see how it would all turn out, especially considering the vast number of people who seem to hate any single time Soyeon opens her mouth, or anytime she chooses to do anything, really. Honestly, the whole Soyeon hate train is a different video for a different day, but the amount of people who flood Reddit and Twitter anytime I-DLE announces a new comeback just so they can make fun of her English pronunciation is some of the weirdest stan behavior that I've personally ever seen. Like, really, y'all? English isn't her first damn language. She isn't going to pronounce every single syllable the way you're used to hearing it. And I get the whole argument of people saying, well, maybe she shouldn't use English at all if she can't pronounce the words correctly. But seriously, you're restricting this woman from using a language just because you don't like the way it sounds coming out of her mouth? That's some odd gatekeeping behavior, and something that she could easily push back on some of us who try to sing some of the lyrics in these Korean songs. I mispronounce Korean words and names in these videos so much that I'd be the biggest hypocrite in the world to try to talk shit about this woman's pronunciation. So you will never hear me make fun of an idol for struggling with pronunciation. Anyway, back to the EP. Many hardcore nebbies from what I've seen weren't too kind to this album, mainly because they were upset that none of the members had any writing or producing credits on it. And I get it, y'all, but come on. These women have not sat down since Tomboy was released. When I heard the announcement that they were dropping this, I was asking when the hell they even had time to record it. So I knew not to expect any writing or producing credits. Of course, it would have been nice since self-producing has been a major part of their identity since debut, but since Tomboy blew up for them, they have had 2 world tours, 2 Korean comebacks, both with full promotion cycles. And that's not even counting the amount of solo activities that each of the members had as well. Between OSTs, magazine shoots, collabs, and festivals, these women were literally all over the world with well over almost 1,000 schedules in 2022, and well over 1,000 schedules in 2023. Cube has been working them like pack mules, which makes sense considering that they've easily fucked themselves out of 2 boy groups this year, with both BtoB and Pentagon choosing to leave the agency. So them not having time to write or produce for this EP was no surprise. So considering that, you might be wondering how I felt about the album overall. Well, it was actually not as bad as everyone was expecting it to be. I thought that it was a very well-made album for most of it. I loved I-DLE for its beautifully melancholic instrumentals, and the music video had a cute little story. I Want That was okay, but I personally don't think it should have been the title track, especially if they were hoping this would be their grand splash in the US market. I think that Eyes Rose should have been the song that they pushed the most behind I-DLE, because that song was an absolute banger. It's been on repeat since release, and I don't care what anyone has to say. It's one of the best English releases from a K-pop group that I have personally ever heard. But again, that's just my opinion. Tall Trees was a beautiful mid-tempo track that really allowed Miyeon, Minnie, and Oogie to flex their vocals. And the lyrics were oddly far more poetic than I expected them to be. The only song I wasn't feeling was Flip It, which is unfortunate because this song seems to be a fan favorite for so many. I just thought the lyrics were a little mediocre and the song sounded somewhat outdated. The only bright side here was that Shua got a few moments to shine here and there, which rarely ever happens, so that's a major plus. But the song itself was just not one of my favorites from them. Overall, the EP felt like it was just them sort of testing the waters for the US market. I have no idea how this album did with sales or on the charts, so I can't say if they got the results they wanted or not. I just hope that they release far more English releases. But considering how quickly they gave up on the Japanese market, only time will tell whether or not they continue to pursue the US market. As for other albums that received mixed reviews from me, IVE's first full album was also okay. I personally preferred the album that they released afterwards, IVE Mine. One other thing that I love the most is the fact that they actually released a full album with 11 whole songs and didn't continue the annoying tradition of throwing 8 songs together and calling it a full album like some other groups have. Whatever, that's just a nitpick on my part, so I'll shut up about it and talk about the album itself. Most of the album was decent, but unfortunately only 5 songs really stuck out to me. I loved Lips, Blue Blood was on repeat. I Am was perfect, with Liz getting to remind us of why she's one of 4th Gen's greatest female vocalists. And I know a lot of people hated Kitsch, but I'm sorry y'all, I still really like this song. Hypnosis was also an obvious precursor to Baddie. In fact, I swear these two could be sister songs. It was one of the harder hitting songs that they had done prior to Baddie, and Hypnosis had a bass line that hit even harder in the car during drives. Not Your Girl really reminded me so much of some 2nd Gen girl groups like Bestie or Girls' Day for some reason. It just sounded like something one of these groups would do, which isn't a bad thing. I love when current groups decide to channel some 2nd Gen energy, and I hope more groups do it in the future. Beyond that, the rest of the album was just not for me personally. I thought that Heroine and Shine With Me were great vocally, but as songs themselves, they didn't really stick with me personally. Again, this is obviously no hate towards anyone who believed that this album is a non-skip masterpiece. I'm just saying that I didn't feel that way, and though there were some great songs on here, I just wasn't vibing with a good majority of them. IVE did, however, dominate for me with most of their other 2023 releases. I loved Off the Record, Holy Moly, Either Way, and OTT, and their 2 Japanese releases, Classic and Wave. I just hate the fact that I loved literally everything that they released in 2022, and that their 2023 releases weren't on the same level, but that doesn't mean that I suddenly hate the group. Every group goes through ups and downs musically for me, and while 11, Love Dive, Royal, and Take It will be songs that I don't think I'll ever skip, Baddie is a song that will most likely not get the same type of attention from me. Let's move on to some more agency news, with Chang'e choosing to leave MNH. Honestly, I don't know who didn't see this coming. She didn't seem very happy with the way they rolled out her first album, and no, I'm not even gonna try to pronounce it. Thus, the album got a lot less attention than it should have. The same can be said for her second album, Bare and Rare Part 1. Now, when I mentioned that IVE came in with a full album, Changha was the one who really knew what a full album was when she dropped a massive 21-song juggernaut of an album back in 2021. I'm thinking that MNH probably ran into some financial difficulties during the pandemic and ended up fumbling the bag with all of their artists. And yes, I'm looking at you, Bandit. But seeing Changha leave to pursue other opportunities was great. It just sucks that we'll probably never get that part 2 to Bare and Rare. I hope she gets to come back soon because I swear it's felt like it's been forever since she's done anything new. And speaking of people who've taken forever to make a comeback, we gotta talk about Lightsam, Weekly, and Everglow, who pretty much go hand in hand on this. All three of these groups virtually vanished from the industry for like 2 years, and thankfully their companies eventually remembered that they exist and granted them each with new minis. Lightsam's latest comeback, Honey or Spice, was a great reintroduction to the group. I think that it was a perfect concept for them, mainly because it took their previous comeback alive and expanded upon everything that I liked about that song. Maybe someone at Cube finally realized that Lightsam is a group where half of the members fit a softer, cuter vibe, while the other half fit a harder, edgier concept. They managed to make this work perfectly with Honey or Spice, which is a song that's pretty much half cute, half girl crush. Nayeon and Chowon's vocals soar and shine here. Sungha's rap was one of the best girl group raps of 2023, and even Joohyun got to flex some vocals on one of the best K-pop song bridges to come out this year. And even Hina also got to be front and center for once. She got more lines and more center time. This was also a very great era for her. I hope she gets more of this kind of treatment going forward. As for the group themselves, Cube seems to have put far more effort into pushing them this era, and this seems to have paid off a little considering that one of their dance performance videos has recently pulled in over 2 million views, which is a first for their channel. I'm hoping this means that Cube won't sideline them for another 2 years and that they'll get far more activities in 2024. But no one understands why Cube makes the decisions that they do better than Cube, so we shall see. In other news, Everglow dropped Slay, and though it wasn't my favorite song by them, I did like it. I was hoping they'd channel some first energy and give us another epic banger, and they kinda did, but this release was also so much more quiet than their previous releases. It honestly didn't feel like it got that much promotion, and really just felt as though Weihua wanted another excuse to send them on another tour. But to do that, they really should have given us more than just 3 songs, especially after 2 years of giving us nothing. I guess maybe they just weren't sure how the fandom looked at this point and weren't confident with how the mini would sell, but that's kind of what happens when you bench your group for 2 years. They are definitely going to need some time to rebuild their fandom after being gone for so long. That is if Weihua is willing to have some patience with them. Also, when I mentioned beautiful bridges with Lightsam's Honey or Spice, I also need to place Everglow's Slay right next to it because these were some beautiful vocals from Mia and Xian here. And I need to hear more of them because I really hope that Slay won't be the last time we hear from these ladies. Meanwhile, Weekly decided to drop in with Vroom Vroom. And I loved the retro vibes this song came with. I know many people are tired of the retro trend, and I get it, but I personally am not tired of it yet, so I'll eat up any future comebacks that choose to come through with this sound because Vroom Vroom is a mood. I really loved the dreamy sounding vibes this song delivered. It honestly reminded me of some 70s sounding disco, and if that was how the song was described to me before I listened to it, I most likely would not have even paid it any attention because I would have been convinced that I wouldn't have liked it. But I'm so glad that I didn't listen to any of the teasers beforehand and that I didn't go into this with any biases. So I just took the song for what it was and I absolutely loved it. I'm gonna need IST to not let them waste away in the dungeon again because Monday's voice is just way too precious to be smothered. I get the feeling that IST got a little scared of how much bad press their previous release Vinpara got and following Jiyoon's departure. So they just simply decided to shelve the group long enough to make people forget that that song exists, but seriously IST? Why the hell did you think that benching these women for 2 whole years was a good idea? Vinpara wasn't the worst thing ever. It was just a poor idea to make such a sudden and drastic concept change. But the group still had a strong fandom after that release. You can't just starve their fans like that. Had you released Vroom Vroom right after Vinpara, the album still would have sold just as well. Considering how long they've been gone, their latest sales for Colorize were very good. It's not like Weekly was barely selling albums before Benpara. They clearly still have a very strong and loyal fandom willing to support them. Hopefully IST will remember that for 2024. Speaking of people who still have a very strong fandom, I gotta talk about how happy I am for Soojin. Now, I won't even attempt to go through all of the shit that went down in 2021 because there are already so many other videos that can recap that story far better than me. So what I will say is that I'm very glad that she made her comeback this year. Not only did she make her comeback, her first solo album sold very well considering how many people were convinced that she would flop. These are some great numbers for a soloist, especially for a soloist who re-debuted following a scandal that many thought would be career-ending. I can't even imagine how welcome she must feel. And I know that there are still some people out there who will continue to berate her for the whole situation, but the sheer amount of vitriolic hate this woman got at the onset of this scandal was uncalled for. And this was before any of us really knew what was even going on, and when there were just rumors. In the end, the outcome of all of this was pretty inconclusive, since it was pretty much stated that there was no proof for or against her, and a lot of he said, she said conversation between several parties of people about alleged events that might have happened years ago. All of this discourse ultimately left her career in limbo, so I honestly wasn't sure that we would ever see her again. I figured that maybe she might open a YouTube channel someday and possibly even become an influencer, but I'm very glad that she bounced back, because some of the news that came out about how she was doing mentally during all of this was very concerning. So hopefully 2024 will be a great year for her. Now, I'm not going to sit here and throw shade at her for something that I don't think was ever definitively proven with hardcore evidence, nor am I going to act as if the accusations against her weren't serious. Anyone accused of this with actual, undeniable, and unaltered proof levied against them should be reprimanded. But never, in my opinion, is it okay to wish death upon someone. And Soojin got a whole lot of shit for something that none of us are even sure she ever even did, even to this day. So that's my take on that. Now let's move on. Let's talk about some more debuts. Now, I've already talked about Baby Monster and Young Posse in a recent video, so I'm not going to bring them up here. I also don't know if Crystal Eyes or Evolution even count as 2023 debuts, since they're both subunits of Triple S, who also had their full group debut this year. But so far, I have liked pretty much all of the music coming from them. The Assemble Mini was flawless, not a single weak song. Cherry Talk, Girls Capitalism, and Invincible were songs that I have no complaints about. The way they are coming together as a group has been really well done. Hopefully Madhouse knows what they're doing and the group continues to prosper. The group that had the most memorable debut of 2023 for me is Kiss of Life. I also briefly mentioned them in another video, so I'll quickly reiterate what I said there and move on. The group was literally a breath of fresh air for me personally. I loved their old school R&B pop sound. The members are all individually talented, with Belle quickly becoming one of my favorite 4th gen vocalists. The group as a unit is also very charismatic on stage. I cannot wait for them to start touring, so I can see them live, because judging by their MMA performance, they definitely know how to work a crowd, and I need to hear Belle's vocals live. Now, while Kiss of Life is a 4-member girl group that debuted with some very impressive vocals, let's talk about another 4-member girl group with great vocals that pretty much imploded in 2023. Several months back, I made a video about 50/50, basically praising them for their vocals, their music, and their members. Little did I know at the time that Cupid would be the last time we would see and hear Aran, Seo, Kina, and Sena together. Earlier in the year of 2023, this group's career took one of the most unusual trajectories that I have ever seen any group in K-pop take. Honestly, y'all, there are so many twists and turns with this group's story that I've considered making a video until I realized that that video would probably end up being 8 hours long. And I wouldn't even know how to end it because this saga is still technically going on as I'm recording this video. I'd end up with some kind of Netflix miniseries if I even tried to recap everything that happened here, but we'll briefly give a Cliff Notes version. Please correct me if I'm wrong, y'all, because so much happened here that I know I'm going to miss something, but here we go. 50/50 went from being a relatively unknown group to achieving sudden recognition when their first comeback, Cupid, went crazy viral. The group then proceeded to cannibalize itself when the members basically went to war with Attract, who was their company at the time. Long story short, 50/50 was apparently being poached by their producers, the Givers, who convinced them to break their contract with Attract. And since then, it's been a non-stop shit show with so many accusations being thrown back and forth between pretty much everyone involved that I have no idea when or if any of this will ever end. Everyone is currently suing everyone. Korean lawmakers have since considered drafting some kind of new law inspired by the entire situation, and the group's legacy has now gone down the drain. As of now, Kina is the only remaining member, and Attract is vowing to get new members to replace the old ones, while also insinuating that they might even sue Aran, Seo, and Sena for violating the terms of their contract. I doubt anyone saw this group's downfall occur like this, and sure as hell not this fast. They got to taste success for 2 whole seconds before it all fell apart. And all I have to say about that is this. I don't know if any of the accusations on either side are true or not, so I'm not going to come in an opinion about that. Also, I don't want to go down the route of unfairly villainizing the members when I simply don't have enough information to justify doing so. However, if the members really were being coached by the Givers to turn against their label, then this truly sucks for them because they've essentially been blacklisted in South Korea. Even JYP Entertainment's current CEO basically stated that the former 50/50 members have essentially been ruined, and that it's highly unlikely that any company would want to risk taking them in after this. So, whatever they were trying to do wasn't done the way it should have been done. I think that they were probably hoping that the court of public opinion would be on their side so that even if they did lose in the court system, then they would still have a salvageable career to come back to. But what they ultimately and unfortunately did was guarantee that they would most likely never be idols again. The amount of hatred they got during all of this was likely too much for them to recover from. As of now, they've essentially been forced out of the industry and are probably going to be swimming in some serious debt for a while due to all of the lawsuits and other miscellaneous fees that they've put into pursuing this whole thing. On the bright side, people have also speculated that Soojin would never recover, and we've seen how well she's managed to bounce back, so only time will tell how things will go for Seo, Aran, and Sena. Either way, I will forever mourn this group for what they could have been, but I'm still very curious to see what happens next. So now that brings us to the end of this video. But don't go just yet, because I have one small thing to say to anyone still listening. I have no idea how long this video is going to end up being, but if you're still watching, then I absolutely must thank you for sticking around. When I started this channel, I had no expectation or hopes for it blossoming into anything substantial, and it's grown far more than I ever thought it would. I was surprised to even get 10 subscribers, and now we're well over 3,000 strong, and trust me when I say that it took me a good minute to process that information. And I'm not trying to be dramatic saying that, I'm just pointing out how true it is. I am very convinced that the first video I ever uploaded was so poorly done that I have refused to go back and rewatch it. To everyone who has subscribed and watched and commented, I can't tell you enough how thankful I am that you even bothered to take time out of your day to listen to my random bullshit. The discussions I've seen in the comment sections were so fun and informative, and I hope we get to have more of them in the future. Let me know what events or comebacks in 2023 that I didn't mention here. And 2023 was such a great year for K-pop and for this channel, and I hope for more of the same in 2024 for all of you guys and whatever you have planned for yourselves. Thanks again for watching, and happy holidays and happy new year. We shall definitely meet again very soon.